Type 5, the observer. I've been really wanting to do this video because I did I don't know if you've seen the ones I did with Enneagram or with integral recovery. And I talked about 5, and I want to say I did this probably in 2009 with John Dupuy of Integral Recovery, and got a lot of pushback on that video. And some 5s felt misunderstood. And that's 9 years ago. That was then, this is now. And I've been finding in these past 9 years something I didn't realize about 5s earlier. And that is because of the somatic work that I've been learning a lot about and that I've been doing with my clients. And somatic has to do with understanding the body. And so if you think of 3 centers, the head's in charge of perceiving, the heart is in charge of connecting and doing connection. That's its function. And the body's in charge, it feels. It's the frontline receiver of human experience, and it feels. And with 5s feel things, and there's almost a hypersensitive system that can get easily overwhelmed. And so if you think of a child who comes into the world, if you want to get into type 5, think of a child who comes into the world, and perhaps they experience their caregivers or people as kind of wanting too much, or they experience the world and caregivers as kind of distant and removed. Now that could be part of the reality because they're always interacting with the reality where maybe they had a parent that was too much or not. But it is how the 5 experiences the world, that it demands too much from them, or it expects too little. So the strategy is to back off in order to observe. And so they develop this quality of avarice for private time, avarice for time alone, time to think, because there's this sense that the world's is going to need too much from me, and it's happening actually in their bodies. And for those of you who are in relationship with 5s, hopefully this can help you understand that there's sometimes almost a physical reaction, a physical resistance to wanting to push you away. Now, from remember, I've talked a lot about the idealizations of the types. Well, for 5s, the idealization is I'm wise and competent. Because if the world feels like a lot, it's expecting too much or demanding too little, I'm going to move up into my head and I'm going to try to figure things out. And what I'm also going to do is I'm going to do something from a psychological perspective. It's called isolation of affect. That is, I'm going to somehow almost cut off from my heart. It doesn't mean my heart's not feeling something. But in my engagement with you, if I can go up to my head and get competent, wise, knowledgeable, and intellectualize my feelings, I won't have to feel the felt sense of those feelings. Sometimes I may numb them. Sometimes I may suppress them in some way. But what happens in the effect, the experience that you may feel, is for the 5, if you're in a conversation with a 5, it can feel like they're emotionally disconnected. And in some sense, in that live conversation, they are. 5s tend to do the emotion by themselves when they're not with you. And so that's where it can feel safe, like people aren't going to be asking too much from me. They're not going to be demanding things that I can't do on the spot. So if you're in relationship with a 5, you're going to have to be prepared to carry the conversation. And the reason is that they're trying to find some sort of way that they can come in, because remember, the idealization is I'm knowledgeable. So if you're talking about something in which they don't feel totally like they're going to perhaps, again, intellectualize. But if you point to something they know a lot about, something they're very interested in, they may start engaging more deeply. Your 5 may. So shared information is a way to connect. Shared interests is a way to connect, but it's shared. I would say the word is shared information. It's almost a way to bond with you. So the other thing is 5s are going to compartmentalize their friendships. You're not going to see my rowing group, know my Enneagram group, and knowing my business friends. They're going to be kept fairly compartmentalized. That doesn't mean they're never brought together, but 5s prefer it when I can keep this group here and this group here, off to some sort of, it's where it's separate in some way, because and like one five I know, it says, you're on a need-to-know basis. So if they start talking with each other, it can feel a little bit overwhelming for a five. So you may not always experience your five as sensitive, but that's because they're doing their emotions on their own and away from you. Now, there's an upside of this, is that when things are really difficult and challenging, fives are going to bring clarity. They're going to bring objectivity, and there's a certain way. When my sister was ill, my brother-in-law was amazing at organizing and doing all of the research, organizing her meds, and keeping a level head during that time when everyone else was having strong emotions. So the other thing for the fives is if it is an emotionally charged atmosphere, they're going to want to attend to your emotions because they're going to want to do their emotions privately and on their own. They respect your self-sufficiency. They respect your self-control. They prefer it when you're doing things, when you have your own interests and you do things on your own. Because your expectations can feel overwhelming. It can create almost a kind of confusion. I know too, and a lot of people I know who are fives and in the relationship, I'll hear a lot around, people will talk about how they'll get persnickety about a word in an emotionally charged conversation. Because it's easier to dissect a word than to actually kind of come into the felt sense of the emotions. So if you are a five, it's really important to start learning to feel feelings, developing the capacity to know what you're feeling in the given moment, and to recognize that this kind of voice in your head that people are going to want too much, it's a narrative. And although it doesn't always feel that way, it can feel very real. But remember, given our type, we tend to amplify these different things that are in the environment. We blow them up in our heads in some way. So, for fives, the real work is on noticing your tendency to withdraw and practice staying connected. And if you are in relationship with a five, the way you can support the five is to, again, come back home to yourself. When we're all in our own boats, it does make relationships a lot easier. So check out my other videos about fives. And for those fives from Integrative Recovery, I thank you for your pushback. It's been very helpful to help me understand you more fully. So check out my website, www.lesliehirschberger.com. And there's all sorts of information, videos, and you can also check out my Facebook page, Leslie Hirschberger, and find me on Instagram as well. So feel free, if you're a five, to weigh in. Thank you. And up next, I'm going to be working, trying to think. I know I've done two, so we work with fours and do an Enneagram shorts on fours in relationship.